I'm Rachel Whitman. And I knew something was wrong when my husband started shaving before his late-night calls. Derek hadn't touched a razor after 8 p.m. in years. He said it was for client meetings. But soon it wasn't just the shaving. He started taking showers before leaving the house, wearing cologne he hadn't used since our honeymoon, turning his phone face down every time I walked into the room. It didn't take much to realize something had changed, but I never imagined the other woman would be my sister. At my 34th birthday dinner, my little sister Sabrina showed up late, wearing a firetruck red dress and her signature smirk. She always had a flair for dramatics, but this time she outdid herself. As I was cutting my cake, chocolate lava, my favorite, she tapped her glass. "Before we sing, I have something to share," she said, then smiled straight at me. "I'm pregnant." My fork paused midair. "And," she added, resting her hand gently on her stomach, "Derek's the father." The entire table fell silent. My mother gasped. My father blinked like he hadn't heard right. And Derek? He just stared at his plate. But me? I smiled. Because what Sabrina didn't know was that I had known for weeks. And what Derek didn't know was that I had a copy of the medical record that would make Sabrina's little announcement explode in her face. Before I take you inside the night everything unraveled, let me take you back to when it all began. Because what came next changed everything. I stared at the melting cake in front of me, the candle still flickering like it didn't know what had just happened. My sister sat across the table, beaming with that same smug satisfaction she wore when she beat me at board games by cheating and calling it strategy. Except this time it wasn't a game. I took another bite slowly. Tasted like chocolate and ash. No one at the table breathed. Even the waiter, who'd just come to refill water, hesitated and backed away like he'd walked into a crime scene. Honestly, he had. Sabrina looked at me, expecting what? An explosion? A breakdown? She had no idea I'd already had that moment. Alone. 3 weeks ago. In the bathroom. At 2 a.m. It wasn't just the texts. It wasn't just the late nights. It was the way he said her name when she wasn't around. Like he was tasting it. I saw the signs. I just didn't want to believe them. Because if I did, then I'd have to admit that the two people I trusted most had been lying to my face. And even worse, that I had seen it coming. It wasn't the first time Sabrina took what was mine. When we were kids, she stole my stuffed fox and claimed she found it in the backyard. When I was 17, she convinced my prom date to skip the dance and come to her party instead. And when I got my first internship at a local TV station, she told our mom, "Rachel's not even that interesting. She just pretends to be confident." Everyone laughed. Except me. Still, I tried. I really did. I included her in my life because that's what you're supposed to do when you're the older sister, right? You forgive. You make space. You hope they grow up. But Sabrina didn't grow up. She got better at hiding her claws. The first time I introduced her to Derek, she looked him up and down like he was a new handbag. "You clean up nice," she said to him. Not a hello. Not a nice to meet you. I laughed it off. Derek chuckled awkwardly. My mom said that's just Sabrina's sense of humor. But even then, something in my stomach twisted. That twist never went away. It only got deeper, sharper, quieter. We hadn't always been like this. There were moments scattered like confetti through our childhood, where we were just sisters. She used to crawl into my bed when there was thunder. We made up dance routines in the living room when our parents were out. And I still remember the way she cried when I left for college, hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. But somewhere along the way, something changed. She started seeing me as competition. And I started pretending I didn't notice. So when she made that announcement at my birthday dinner, in front of my parents, in the middle of Marino's rooftop, I realized she wasn't just trying to hurt me. She wanted to win. She wanted to be the one with the headline, the spotlight, the man. But what she didn't know, what Derek didn't know, was that I had been building my own case for weeks. It started with the emails. I'd borrowed Derek's laptop to send something to my boss when mine died. A tab was open. A draft. Titled, "Last Night Was Dangerous." I clicked. I shouldn't have. But I did. The email was from Sabrina. And it wasn't vague. It mentioned the hotel, the elevator, the way Derek's hand felt on her back. I stared at the screen for 20 minutes, barely breathing. Then I took a screenshot. And another. And another. In total, I saved 47 messages. Some of them were from him. Most were from her. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I emailed myself the files, created a password-protected folder, and then I opened a bottle of wine and started looking up private investigators. Because if they were willing to humiliate me, then they should have known who they were playing with. The next morning, I emailed a firm called Halston and Bloom, a boutique private investigations agency in Austin known for their discretion. I didn't want the cheapest. I wanted the cleanest, the most professional, the kind that knew how to get answers without leaving trails. I used my work email, not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel like I was taking back control, one move at a time. By noon, I was sitting across from a woman named Camille Bloom, sipping weak office coffee while she reviewed the screenshots I brought. She said nothing for a long time, just flipped through them, one finger tapping her chin. Finally, she looked up. "Do you want to catch them?" she asked. "Or destroy them?" I didn't blink. "Both." She smiled. "Then we'll need a week." I gave her everything I had: Derek's work schedule, Sabrina's address, the model of his car, even the brand of his cologne. And then I waited. At home, I played my part. I smiled at the right moments, cooked the meals Derek liked, pretended I didn't notice when he came home late, smelling faintly of vanilla shampoo I didn't own. Sabrina and I didn't speak much that week. Not that we ever did anymore. She texted me once after the birthday dinner. "Can we talk?" I left it on read. My mom called the next day, pretending nothing had happened. She asked how the cake was, if the decorations had turned out nice, and if I liked the blouse she picked. I almost laughed. The gaslighting was so deeply ingrained. They probably didn't even notice they were doing it. When I didn't answer, she sighed. "I know it's awkward, but Sabrina's going through a lot. You know how she is." Oh, I did. On day 6, Camille emailed me a zip file titled, Subject, Derek Collins, Unredacted. My hands trembled as I downloaded it. There were timestamps, photos, security footage. Derek pulling into Sabrina's complex 27 times in 3 weeks. Always after 10 p.m. Always leaving before dawn. There were shots of them hugging in her hallway. One of them laughing in her car. One that made me stop breathing, him holding a tiny box from a jewelry store I recognized. The same one that Sabrina's gold bracelet had come from. I stared at that image for a long time. The box was open, and she was trying it on. The folder also included audio clips. A few of their phone calls, recorded legally through Sabrina's building's intercom system. They weren't graphic, but they didn't need to be. One line burned into my ears. "She still has no idea," Derek said, his voice tired but smug. "I think she's starting to suspect," Sabrina replied. "But don't worry. She never does anything." I closed my laptop. And I didn't cry. Instead, I poured myself a drink, sat down at the kitchen island, and for the first time in weeks I smiled, not from pain, but from clarity. They thought I wouldn't do anything, because that's who I'd been my whole life. The older sister who let things go. The quiet wife who smiled in family photos. The woman who swallowed it all to keep the peace. Not anymore. That weekend I made a copy of every file, printed the best ones and tucked them in a black envelope with no label. Then I placed that envelope in my desk drawer, next to the one document that would take this story from betrayal to scorched earth. Derek's vasectomy report. 18 months ago. We sat together in Dr. Cleary's office. I remember the coldness of the room, the sound of the fluorescent lights, the way Derek said, "I just don't want to bring a kid into this world. Not with how crazy things are." And I agreed. Back then, I believed him. He scheduled the appointment for the following month. I picked him up from the clinic myself, bought him a milkshake, held frozen peas to his lap while he groaned on the couch. I had every paper, every form, even the follow-up clearance 6 weeks later that confirmed the procedure had worked. He was medically sterile. So unless Sabrina was carrying the second immaculate conception, that baby wasn't his. I didn't know yet how I would reveal it. Whether I'd do it in front of our families, in private, or in court. But I knew one thing for sure. They weren't going to win. Not this time. Not with me. I didn't plan on going to that dinner. Honestly, I wanted to be done. Papers were ready. My lawyer Alicia Graham had already walked me through the initial filing. All I had to do was sign, and Derek would be served before Friday. But then, I got the group text. Family dinner at Marino's this Saturday. 7 p.m., Dad's treat. Sent by my mother. But clearly not written by her. The spacing was too tight. The punctuation too perfect. That was Sabrina's doing. She was staging something. First I wanted to ignore it. Pretend I never saw it. Let them sit around their little table and perform for each other. But then something shifted in me. A strange, unexpected calm. Not anger. Not even vengeance. Something closer to readiness. Because I finally realized. This wasn't just dinner. This was their stage. And I had the script. So I replied. Looking forward to it. Saturday came quickly. I wore a navy wrap dress, simple. Elegant, the one Derek once said made me look too serious. Perfect. I arrived 5 minutes early and requested a seat change. Instead of the large round table we'd usually take, I asked for a long rectangular one. I didn't want eye contact. I wanted focus. The hostess smiled and nodded. She didn't know it, but she just helped set the scene. My parents arrived next. My father greeted me with his usual half hug. My mother scanned my outfit, offered a tight smile and said, "You look sharp." Then Sabrina walked in, wearing white, a maternity dress, though she barely had a bump, flowy chiffon, gold jewelry, hair curled just right, and Derek trailing behind her. He was freshly shaved, wearing a tailored suit I hadn't seen since our anniversary 2 years ago. He didn't look at me. That was fine. I was already watching them. We made it through appetizers. Small talk. Nervous sips of wine. Derek tried to ask about my work. Sabrina interrupted to mention a new client of hers, a luxury skincare brand. My mother lit up. My father kept checking the prices on the menu. And just as the entrees were served, Sabrina stood up, tapped her glass, and smiled. "Before we eat," she began. Her voice just loud enough to carry across nearby tables. "I have something to share." I folded my napkin and rested my hands in my lap. She continued. "As many of you know, Derek and I have grown incredibly close this past year. It wasn't something we planned. It just happened." Derek stared down at his steak. Not a word. "And now," she said, resting one hand gently on her stomach, "we're having a baby. A little miracle that came out of something complicated but real." My mother gasped but didn't object. Of course not. She was already trying to reframe the betrayal into some sweet family fairy tale. My father cleared his throat. Is this official?" His voice wavered between confusion and denial. Sabrina nodded solemnly. 10 weeks. Confirmed. Then she looked at me, as if waiting for the explosion, the tearful scene, the public collapse. I smiled, and slowly reached into my bag. "I actually brought something too," I said. I wasn't sure when to share it. But since we're being so open tonight. Derek looked up and froze. I placed 2 envelopes on the table. One black, one white. "Go ahead," I said, gesturing toward him. "Black one's yours." His hand shook slightly as he picked it up. Opened it. Pulled out the photos. His face drained of color. Sabrina leaned forward, curiosity painted across her face. Then Derek handed her one of the photos. A still of them outside her building. Time-stamped. Labeled. Another of them in her car. And the one that mattered most. The bracelet. She went pale. What is this?" she stammered. "That's what you two call love," I replied. Documented. Time-stamped. Undeniable. They looked like children cornered, blinking in disbelief that someone dared fight back. My mother opened her mouth. I stopped her. "I'm not done." I turned to Derek. White envelope. He hesitated. Then opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Derek's vasectomy report. Signed by Dr. Matthew Cleary. Confirmed and dated. 18 months ago. I watched it hit him like a train. Sabrina blinked rapidly. What is this supposed to mean?" I looked directly at her. "It means your baby isn't Derek's." For a moment no one moved. The music from the restaurant speakers kept playing softly, the clinking of silverware at nearby tables continued, but at our end of the room, time collapsed. Sabrina stared at the document like it was written in a language she didn't understand. "What do you mean, it's not Derek's?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I said calmly. That he had a vasectomy over a year and a half ago. Fully successful. Zero possibility of conception. Derek slowly pushed his chair back. I was going to tell you, he muttered. Not even sure which one of us he was talking to. Sabrina's hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. You told me we didn't need protection because you got tested last year. I meant for STDs, he said, eyes down. I didn't think any of this was going to go this far. Sabrina's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked around at Derek, at my parents, at me, like she was waiting for someone to rescue her. No one did. My mother looked like she'd seen a ghost. She reached for her wine glass and missed. My father finally broke the silence. If Derek isn't the father, he said slowly, then who is? Sabrina blinked. Once. Twice. Then dropped her gaze. There was someone before, she murmured. Her voice was paper thin. He's married. We weren't. It wasn't supposed to last. Derek leaned forward, incredulous. You told me I was the only one. Sabrina flinched. You said you hadn't been with anyone else in over a year. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I thought it was yours, she snapped, her voice cracking. I really did. I stayed silent, letting the chaos settle into its own weight. Derek stood up. He didn't yell, didn't slam the table. Just stared at her with the look I hadn't seen since our wedding, when he used to believe in permanence. I left my marriage for this, he said bitterly. For what? A lie. You didn't leave, I said. Voice low but clear. I kicked you out. And you chose her. Don't rewrite the script, Derek. He didn't argue. He just looked at me, then at the paper, then at the door, and walked out. Sabrina followed, but not before turning back to me, her face a mess of smeared mascara and fury. You planned this, she hissed. You waited. You wanted to humiliate me. I tilted my head. No. I said. I wanted to be free. Humiliation was just a bonus. She left without another word. The silence they left behind was heavier than their presence. I looked at my parents. My mother was still frozen, glass in hand. My father rubbed his temple like it physically hurt to process what had just happened. I don't even know what to say, he muttered. You don't have to say anything, I replied. I wasn't expecting support, just clarity. My mother finally found her voice. Rachel, this is a mess. But a baby, whatever the circumstances, is still family. Is it? I asked, not angry, just tired. Because I don't remember you saying that when I told you I didn't want kids. Or when Sabrina broke up my marriage. Or when she took every single thing that ever meant anything to me. She didn't mean. Don't, I cut in. Don't defend her right now. Just don't. My mother looked down. Maybe for once, out of shame. I stood up. Left enough cash on the table to cover my meal. Slid my chair in without a sound. I'll have Alicia send Derek the official divorce papers Monday, I said quietly. And if either of you want a relationship with me again, it's going to be on very different terms. My father nodded. My mother didn't move. And I walked out. The cool night air hit my face like clarity. No tears. No rage. Just something still. Something steady, like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath too long. Like standing still in the center of a storm that had finally blown past. It was over. Not the healing. Not the grieving. But the game. The pretending. The performance I had been forced into my whole life, being the reasonable one, the forgiving one, the older sister who understands. That woman was gone. In her place was me. Rachel. No hyphen. No title. Just me. And that was finally enough. I moved out the following Thursday. Derek wasn't home when the movers arrived. I didn't leave a note. Just took what was mine, clothes, books, artwork I bought with my own paycheck, and left the house that never really felt like mine to begin with. I closed the front door and kept walking. No tears. No turning back. Instead, I drove across town to a bright, one-bedroom apartment in South Austin. It smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. The first night, I sat on the floor of my empty living room, drinking wine out of a coffee mug and listening to the hum of traffic outside. There was no Derek. No Sabrina. No pretending. Just me. And for the first time in years, felt like enough. I spent the next few days in a rhythm of paperwork and progress. My lawyer Alicia was fast and methodical. The prenup held. Derek had no legal claim over anything I'd built before our marriage. Still, he tried. He sent a message through Alicia's office asking for a conversation in private. I declined. Then came the texts. Derek, I never meant to hurt you. Derek, can we talk just once? Foreclosure. Derek, I miss us. I read them. Then deleted them. Closure wasn't a conversation. It was a boundary. And I was finally building mine. 2 weeks after I left, Sabrina showed up at my apartment. She was standing outside when I pulled into the lot, hair in a messy bun. Oversized hoodie, eyes red and swollen. I didn't invite her in. She didn't ask. I'm keeping the baby, she said. I nodded. I figured. I told the father. The real one. He doesn't want anything to do with it. Of course he didn't. Was it the married guy from your office? I asked. She didn't answer. I didn't need her to. What do you want from me, Sabrina? She stared at the pavement. I don't know, she said. I think I just wanted my sister. I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the girl who stole my clothes or my prom date or my husband. I saw someone lost. Not innocent. Not forgiven. Just lost. I can't be that for you, I said. Not anymore. She nodded. Slowly. I get it. Then she turned and walked away. And I didn't follow. At work, I found focus again. My team noticed the difference. I wasn't quieter, I was clearer. I spoke up in meetings. Challenged ideas I used to nod through. Volunteered to lead a campaign I'd once been too burned out to consider. There was a weight lifted and I hadn't realized how long I'd carried it. One afternoon, I stayed late finishing mock-ups and found a sticky note left on my desk. Your clarity is terrifying. In the best way. I smiled. It was from Marcus, a senior strategist on another floor. Kind. Brilliant. Unassuming. We'd worked together once on a client pitch 6 months ago. Back then I was distracted, unsure. Now, when he offered to walk me to my car, I said yes. It wasn't a date. Just a walk. But still, it was something I said yes to for me. Meanwhile, Derek kept trying. He left a voicemail after learning I'd filed. I was stupid, Rachel, he said, his voice low, almost broken. I thought I wanted excitement. I didn't realize I was burning down the only steady thing I ever had. I didn't return the call. Steady is a two-person agreement. And he'd made his decision months ago. I was simply finalizing it. About a month after the dinner, I ran into my mother at the grocery store. She looked thinner. Worn down. I miss Sunday dinners, she said, fingering a box of pasta like it held memories. Your father doesn't say it, but he does too. I don't, I replied gently. I miss peace more. She nodded. Didn't argue. And that for her was something. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. From Sabrina. It wasn't long. No grand apology. No excuses. Just this, you don't owe me anything. But I'm trying to be better. For the baby. For myself. If we ever speak again, I want it to be with honesty between us, not pain. I folded it. Placed it in a drawer. Didn't answer. But I didn't throw it away either. Because sometimes progress isn't about rebuilding. Sometimes it's about letting something sit quietly until it has a chance to breathe. 1 year after my 34th birthday dinner, I woke up in an apartment that finally felt like mine. There were no half-used razors in the shower. No cologne I hadn't bought. No shoes by the door that didn't belong to me. Just sunlight pouring through linen curtains, the scent of fresh coffee, and quiet. Peaceful earned quiet. I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hair, and barely recognized the woman looking back. Not because I'd changed dramatically on the outside, but because internally I was rebuilt. That morning I slipped into a pale green dress and flats. Simple. Confident. I had somewhere to be. Marcus had organized a brunch. A small gathering of friends and coworkers. Nothing elaborate, just laughter, food. And people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they were expected to. When I walked into the cafe, he was already there, leaning back in his chair, mug in hand. You're early, he said with a smile. I raised an eyebrow. So are you. He shrugged. Some things are worth showing up early for. I rolled my eyes but smiled anyway. It wasn't a love story, not yet. Maybe never. But it was safe. Real. Honest. And for now that was more than enough. Over lemon scones and good coffee, the conversation turned, like it always does, toward family. A friend asked casually, "Do you ever hear from your sister?" I paused. It wasn't a painful pause, just honest. "She sent me a Christmas card," I said finally. "A photo of her and the baby. His name is Levi." "Is he?" "No, not Derek's." She never said who the father is, and I never asked. The table went quiet for a beat. Then Marcus chimed in. "Some stories don't need an ending," he said. "Just distance." I looked at him, and I thought about that word, distance. How for years I tried to close it. Tried to shrink myself, smooth over conflict, keep the peace at the expense of my own voice. But now I understood something no one had ever taught me. That peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of boundaries. After brunch, I walked home slowly through the streets of downtown Austin. There was a street musician playing a soft tune on the violin, children running through a fountain, an older couple holding hands and not saying a word. I let it all wash over me like the world was exhaling with me. Back in my apartment, I lit a candle, sat at my writing desk, and pulled out the leather-bound journal Marcus gave me months ago. I hadn't written in it yet. Until that day, on the first page, I scribbled, "This year, I learned that survival is not the same as living. I learned that silence isn't strength if it's rooted in fear. That being the bigger person means nothing if it costs you your soul. And that sometimes when people take everything from you, what they actually do is set you free." I closed the book and sat for a long time, just listening to the wind outside my window. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed. A message from Sabrina. "Sabrina, Levi's first birthday is next month. If you ever want to meet him, the door's open." I stared at the screen for a while, and then I powered off my phone. Not out of anger, not from avoidance, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to someone else's chaos. I was choosing my own stillness. Maybe one day I'll respond. Maybe one day I'll meet Levi. But it won't be out of guilt. It won't be out of obligation. It will be when and if it feels right. On my terms. So if you're watching this wondering how you rebuild after betrayal, how you get up from the floor when the people you trusted most shatter everything, let me tell you this. You start by remembering that you were whole before they broke you. That you don't owe anyone forgiveness just because they share your blood. That walking away is not weakness. It's wisdom. The day you stop letting others write your story is the day you start living your own. So here's to that day. Here's to you.